Freda, I know you get away with this on other shows, but you're not talking that nonsense on my show. That is actually a libel. She's not. I know Kelly J. Keane.
She is. Absolutely.
I platform her because she is a woman who's campaigned for women's safety.
Julia, stop lying. Please stop lying.
Freda, you're being rude to me and you're libeling a former guest on my show.
No, I'm not.
I know you get...
There is a familiar pattern in televised political arguments. Once someone can no longer defend the substance of their position, the conversation suddenly becomes about attacking the person challenging them. And this exchange is a perfect example. Julia Hartley-Brewer is discussing women's safety when her guest begins, reaching for accusations instead of answering the argument in front of them. Julia refuses to let that tactic derail the conversation and keeps bringing the discussion back to the actual issue. If you're tired of serious questions, being buried beneath insults and political labels whenever a debate becomes uncomfortable, this is one exchange you'll want to see. Before we roll the clip, take a moment to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss another breakdown. With that said, let's get straight into it.
First up, though, let's talk about, well, a country that would like to be an independent republic, and that is Scotland. And the SNP-led Scottish Government confirmed yesterday they will launch a legal challenge against the bloc put on their plans for gender self-ID reforms. Rishi Sunak and his Scottish Secretary decided to block that change in the law on the basis that actually it was outside of the remit of the Scottish Government's powers, but also that it would basically come up against UK-wide equality laws in terms of the impact on women's and girls' rights and safety. Let's talk about this with Freda Wallace. She's a trans woman and works for the LGBT Foundation in Manchester and is host of the Gender Nebulous podcast. Good morning to you, Freda.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. These gender self-ID reforms, very controversial in Scotland, seen as being part of the reason why Nicola Sturgeon ended up leaving as First Minister, as one of the straws that broke the camel's back. Why do you think Humza Yousaf is confirming that he's going to launch a legal action to try and push this through?
I think it's controversial in Scotland because this was overwhelmingly voted for by a cross-party majority. And what you're seeing here realistically is a meddling of Westminster lobby groups in Scottish politics. This bit of legislation has never been so, there's never been a piece of legislation so heavily fought over. And you have to question why that is. You know, there's so many different factors to this. I don't think this is why Sturgeon left. I think there might be something else going on there. You
say it's not controversial in Scotland. It is. The vast majority, polling has shown very clearly, well over 2/3 of Scottish people don't support this. Now, politicians might well support it in Parliament. Labour voted for this, the Greens, SNP, some other parties, but Lib Dems, lots of support in Parliament, but it hasn't got the support of the Scottish people, including an awful lot of SNP members.
Well, there might be some SNP members, like what's she called, Cherry? I forgot, Joanna Cherry. But they're very much linked to the lobby groups I just mentioned.
What lobby groups?
Well, we're talking about For Women Scotland. We're talking about the LGBT Alliance.
Groups representing women. How awful!
No, they represent Westminster, Julia. 7 independent Scottish women's groups support self-ID, and they wrote to the Scottish Parliament to express that. We cannot allow.
But can you address? No, Freda, address the question I actually asked you. You said it's not controversial in Scotland because people support it, because you pointed to politicians voting for it. I pointed out the Scottish people don't. The polling is very consistent. The Scottish people don't support this.
Well, it depends who's doing the polling, doesn't it, Julia?
It does.
It does. It really does. And I'll tell you something.
There are no polls saying that the Scottish people support this.
Well, I'm just going to say, we can't allow the lives of trans people to be used as a pawn in a Westminster battle. We are, Julia. And you platform people on this programme like Kelly J. Keane are very much linked to far-right nationalist groups.
Freda, I know you get away with this on other shows, but you're not talking that nonsense on my show. That is actually a libel. She's not. I know Kelly J. Keane.
She is. Absolutely.
I platform her because she is a woman who's campaigned for women's safety.
Julia, stop lying. Please stop lying.
Freda, you're being rude to me and you're libeling a former guest on my show.
No, I'm not.
I know you get away with this sort of bullying on other shows, but it doesn't fly with me.
When you have people like Lee Anderson suddenly supporting women's rights, you know there's something fishy going on in Westminster. Let's be realistic about this.
Again, another absurd statement. The key thing here is gender self-ID. Any man or woman being able to say that they are they are living in they are now a different gender, and having that legally recognised, that doesn't expose men to risks, but it does expose women to risks. We know with men who are rapists. We've seen Isla Bryson and other cases who can then, after the point at which they're charged or convicted, say, "Oh, actually, I'm a woman," and get put into a women's prison. That was something that the Scottish gender self-ID law would allow. It's been happening in England as well. Some of the Humza Yousaf and indeed Nicola Sturgeon endorsed happening until there was a public outcry and they had to backtrack. At the end of the day, as much as I don't want trans people to have to go through any more difficulties in their lives than they already are going through, because I think it's a very difficult thing to be in that situation. When rights for trans people trample on the rights and safety of women and girls, we have a right to speak out, don't we?
Well, all you have to do there is do a risk assessment, Julian. 18 other countries that have self-ID laws with no issues, most recently Spain and Finland, they have these laws of self-ID. There's no issues
There's no issue with men being rapists being put into prisons with women.
Well, that's not what we're discussing here, but don't go to extremes. We're not going to those extremes, Julia.
Those extremes, they were 3 in 1 week,
Okay, can I just speak to that a little bit? Because when you go to extremes, you don't win the argument. When you start talking about immigrants as having diseases, we know where that's going.
What happened then? Where did that get thrown in? Talk about the subject in hand, Freda.
Why don't you speak to Brendan O'Neill again and have a word with him, and he'll tell you.
Talk about the subject. I love the fact you're just deflecting to. I mean, why don't you just call everyone a Nazi in the next few minutes? We'll have done. I'll have the full. We'll have the full packet of insults. I asked you a question, and you're deliberately. No, Freda. Do you know what? I'm sure these things. Interviews like this do really well online because people are battling. But yes, I think it's really boring. I'd much rather have a sensible conversation about where trans rights.
That exchange fell apart. The moment the discussion moved from political slogans to evidence, Julia challenged the claims being made, pointed to public opinion that contradicted them, and instead of getting a substantive response, the argument quickly shifted toward attacking the people on the other side. And that is the problem with using labels as a substitute for persuasion. Describing people as extremists or comparing them to Nazis because they disagree over questions surrounding women's spaces does nothing to establish whether their position is actually wrong. It simply changes the subject. If an argument is strong, it should survive questions about evidence, public attitudes, and practical consequences, without requiring personal accusations to protect it. Julia understood that immediately. Rather than allowing the conversation to disappear into another exchange of inflammatory labels, she challenged the characterization itself and demanded that the underlying position be defended. That is exactly what robust broadcasting should encourage. Politicians and activists being required to explain what they believe rather than intimidating opponents out of questioning them. Viewers do not need presenters protecting them from controversial opinions. They need presenters willing to interrogate those opinions from every direction. If somebody makes a serious accusation on national television, they should expect to be challenged on it, and they should be capable of answering when that challenge arrives. At some point, every debate has to return to the underlying questions. What does the evidence show? What protections should women have? And how should competing rights be balanced in practice? Those issues cannot be resolved simply by declaring one side morally unacceptable and refusing to engage with its concerns. That is ultimately why Julia came out stronger in this exchange. She refused to allow accusations and political labels to replace the argument itself. Whatever position someone takes on sex, gender, or women's spaces, it should be possible to defend that position through evidence and reasoning rather than expecting disagreement to end the conversation. Now I want your verdict. Did Julia successfully expose the weakness in her guest's argument, or do you think the guest had a point that was overlooked? Tell me where you stand in the comments and get the discussion going. If you enjoyed the breakdown, like the video, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.